On the morning of May 27, 1942, two men stood at a hairpin turn on a Prague street, waiting for a specific car to pass. They were waiting for a dark green Mercedes convertible, and in that car sat one of the most dangerous men in Nazi Germany, Reinhard Heydrich, the man Hitler called the man with the iron heart, the architect of the Holocaust, the butcher of Prague. The two men carried a Sten submachine gun and modified anti-tank grenades. They were Czech paratroopers sent by the British. Their mission was simple but nearly impossible: assassinate Heydrich and escape alive. What happened in the next 30 seconds would trigger one of the most brutal Nazi reprisals of World War II. To understand why this assassination mattered, you need to understand who Reinhard Heydrich was and why the Nazis considered him irreplaceable. Born in 1904, Heydrich joined the SS in 1931 and quickly became Heinrich Himmler's right-hand man. He was tall, blond, athletic, the perfect Aryan in Nazi eyes. But he was also brilliant, ruthless, and completely without conscience. He created and ran the Nazi security apparatus with terrifying efficiency. He founded the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. He organized the SD, the intelligence service of the SS. He had files on everyone, including other Nazi leaders. Even they feared him. In January 1942, Heydrich chaired the Wannsee Conference, where Nazi leadership formalized the final solution: the systematic extermination of European Jews. Heydrich was the architect who made the Holocaust bureaucratically possible. He oversaw the Einsatzgruppe and death squads that murdered over 1 million Jews in Eastern Europe. He personally reviewed execution reports like business documents. In September 1941, Hitler appointed him acting Reich Protector of Bohemia and Moravia, essentially the Nazi dictator of occupied Czechoslovakia. His first act was a wave of terror: mass arrests, public executions, thousands of Czechs killed or sent to concentration camps. The resistance was nearly destroyed. The Czech underground called him the butcher. Hitler called him the man with the iron heart. Even other SS officers thought he was too extreme. Some historians believe Hitler was grooming Heydrich to eventually succeed him. At 37 years old, he was one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany. British intelligence knew all of this. They knew Heydrich was critical to the Nazi war machine, and they decided he had to die. The plan originated with the British Special Operations Executive and the Czechoslovak government in exile in London. Czech President Edvard Beneš was desperate. The Czech resistance had been crushed. Czech contributions to the war effort were minimal. He needed a dramatic action to prove Czech loyalty to the Allies. He also feared the Allies would honor the Munich Agreement after the war, leaving parts of Czechoslovakia under German control. A bold assassination might change that political calculation. In late 1941, the SOE began training Czech and Slovak soldiers for the mission. The operation was codenamed Anthropoid. 7 men were selected, all volunteers. All knew it was likely a one-way mission. The team leader was Warrant Officer Josef Gabčík, 30 years old, Slovak, quiet, disciplined, an expert marksman. His partner was Staff Sergeant John Kubiš, 28 years old, Czech, more outgoing than Gabčík, skilled with explosives. For months, they trained in Scotland, parachute drops, urban combat, assassination techniques, escape and evasion. They studied Heydrich's movements, his habits, his security. They were given a British Sten gun, modified anti-tank grenades, pistols, and explosives. The grenades were specially designed to fragment into maximum shrapnel. On December 28, 1941, they boarded a Halifax bomber bound for Czechoslovakia. They parachuted into the snowy Czech countryside in the middle of the night. The drop was chaotic. They landed miles from their target zone. Equipment was lost in the snow. But they made it to Prague, and there the Czech underground sheltered them while they prepared for the mission.
For months, Gabčík and Kubiš studied Heydrich's routine. They watched his movements. They identified potential ambush sites. Heydrich made their job easier through his own arrogance. Unlike other Nazi leaders, he refused heavy security. He often rode in an open-top Mercedes without bodyguards. He wanted the Czechs to see him as invincible, untouchable. He drove through Prague streets at predictable times, almost daring someone to attack him. Every morning, he drove from his residence at Panenské Brežiny Castle to his office at Prague Castle. The same route, roughly the same time. The assassins chose a hairpin turn in the Holešovice district. The sharp turn would force Heydrich's car to slow down. There was a tram stop where they could wait without suspicion. They planned escape routes through the city. They identified safe houses. They coordinated with the underground resistance for support. A third paratrooper, Josef Valčík, would stand watch up the road with a mirror. When he saw Heydrich's car approaching, he would signal with a flash of reflected sunlight. The plan was simple. Gabčík would step into the street and shoot Heydrich with the Sten gun at close range. If that failed, Kubiš would throw a grenade at the car. They waited for the perfect moment. Good weather, light traffic. Everything aligned for May 27, 1942. The morning of May 27th was clear and warm. Gabčík and Kubiš arrived at the ambush site at 9:30 a.m. They took their positions. Gabčík stood at the tram stop with the Sten gun hidden under his coat. Kubiš stood nearby with his briefcase containing the grenades. Valčík positioned himself up the road with his mirror. They waited. Ordinary Czechs waited at the tram stop with them, completely unaware of what was about to happen. At 10:30 a.m., Valčík saw the dark green Mercedes approaching. He flashed his mirror. Heydrich's car entered the hairpin turn, slowing to about 15 miles per hour. The top was down. Heydrich sat in the front passenger seat. His driver, SS Oberscharführer Klein, was at the wheel. Gabčík stepped off the curb into the middle of the street. He pulled the Sten gun under his coat. He aimed directly at Heydrich from less than 10 feet away. He pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The gun jammed. For a split second, Heydrich stared at Gabčík. Then his face twisted in rage. Instead of ordering his driver to speed away, Heydrich made a fatal mistake. He stood up in the car and drew his pistol to shoot Gabčík. That gave Kubiš his chance. He ran toward the car and hurled the modified grenade. He aimed for the interior of the Mercedes. His throw was slightly off. The grenade hit the right rear wheel and detonated. The blast was enormous. Shrapnel tore through the car's bodywork. The explosion threw Kubiš backward. He was wounded by fragments from his own grenade. Heydrich stumbled out of the wrecked Mercedes. He was standing. He tried to chase the assassins. He fired shots at them. Then he collapsed against a wall. Blood soaked through his uniform. Fragments of metal, leather from the car seat, and horsehair from the upholstery had been driven deep into his body. Heydrich was loaded into a delivery van and rushed to Bulovka Hospital. He was still conscious, still defiant. Emergency surgery removed grenade fragments from his spleen, diaphragm, and lung. Doctors thought he might survive, but the fragments had carried bacteria deep into his body. Pieces of horsehair, leather, cloth, all contaminated. Infection spread rapidly. For 8 days, Heydrich fought. High fever, sepsis, organ failure. On June 4, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich died. The man with the iron heart was dead at 38.
Hitler was enraged. He ordered immediate and savage reprisals against the Czech people. Martial law was declared. The Gestapo launched a massive manhunt. Rewards were offered. Threats were made. Anyone sheltering the assassins would be executed along with their families. Within days, more than 13,000 Czechs were arrested. Hundreds were executed without trial. Then came the worst atrocity. The village of Lidice, about 15 miles from Prague, was falsely accused of sheltering the paratroopers. On June 10th, Nazi forces surrounded Lidice. All 173 men and boys over age 16 were shot, every single one. The 184 women were sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp. The 88 children were separated. A few who looked Aryan enough were given to German families. The rest were gassed at Chelno. The entire village was burned to the ground. Buildings were dynamited. The cemetery was destroyed. Even the dead were not spared. The ruins were bulldozed flat. The Nazis literally tried to erase Lidice from existence. They wanted to remove it from maps. Another village, Ležáky, received the same treatment. All adults executed, all buildings destroyed. In total, Nazi reprisals killed over 5,000 Czechs. Entire families were wiped out. Villages disappeared. Heydrich received a massive state funeral in Berlin. Hitler gave the eulogy. Heydrich was posthumously awarded the highest grade of the German order. But the manhunt continued. The Gestapo tortured captured resistance members. They infiltrated networks. They offered huge rewards.
On June 16th, the Gestapo got their break. A paratrooper named Karel Čerda, who had been on a different mission, betrayed the resistance. He did it for money, 1 million Reichsmarks. He gave the Gestapo names, addresses, and safe houses. The Gestapo learned that Gabčík, Kubiš, and 5 other paratroopers were hiding in the Orthodox Cathedral of St. Cyril and Methodius in Prague. In the early morning of June 18, 1942, over 700 SS soldiers surrounded the church. The battle began in the church choir loft. Kubiš and 2 others fought from above. They held out for hours with limited ammunition. Kubiš was mortally wounded. He and the others eventually died in the loft after running out of ammunition. Gabčík and 3 others had taken refuge in the crypt below the church. The crypt had only one entrance through a small window. The SS tried to storm the entrance. Gabčík and his comrades fought them off. They were outnumbered hundreds to 1, but the narrow entrance made mass assault impossible. The SS brought in the Prague Fire Brigade,
and attempted to flood the crypt. They pumped thousands of gallons of water through the window. Gabčík and the others stood in rising water, still shooting at any SS soldier who appeared at the window. They fought for over 2 hours. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their last bullets on themselves. They would not be taken alive. When the SS finally entered the crypt, all 4 men were dead. Gabčík, Adolf Opálka, Josef Bublik, Jan Hrubý. They had fought to the very end. The bullet holes in the crypt are still visible today, preserved as a memorial.